All right, mic check, 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Close up your MacBooks and open your notes to page 98. We will be on page 98. That's where we're starting with Unit 4. Hopefully you got something out of the videos and the activities you did on Khan Academy from last class. So, let's get ready to science, guys. Y'all up? Got everything up? Everybody on page 98? We good? We good? All right. So we're in Unit 4. While I'm thinking about it, your Unit 4 test will be on November 5th. Your Unit 4 test will be on November 5th. And that next week, you'll be taking your first district test. That district test will be the first test for the second 9 weeks, okay? Your district test is going to cover everything. It's comprehensive. So Units 2, 3, and 4, and a couple of things that we covered in Unit 1 will be on that test. Those couple of pages we covered in Unit 1. So that's your first district test. Every student that takes biology in the Madison County School District will be taking that test. And it will let us know where you stand, guys. And I am looking for big things from you guys because, you know, you blew me out the water with the last test, and I know y'all got it. So I always have big dreams for you. You'll do great. You'll do great. Believe in yourself like I believe in you. All right. So, anywho. So, let's kind of get some basis for where we are with Unit 4. Unit 4, we're going to talk about cell structure and function. Now, as I told you guys in biology, the big thing with biology is that structure does what? Dictates function, right? Structure dictates function. So, the structure of something determines the way that it functions. So, this unit, we're going to focus solely on the structure and function of the cell. Now, what is a cell? Right. It's the basic unit of structure and function of a living organism, right? It's the basic unit of life. So we've already covered some things about cells. So let's review them real quick before we get into these cell organelles. Now, we know the cell is the basic unit of structure and function for living things. There's two main types of cells. What are they? Eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Awesome. You guys got it. So we have prokaryotic and we have eukaryotic. Remember, this is a review of stuff that we've already covered in previous units. So you're not going to see this on page 98 just yet. 98 focuses solely on those cell organelles. So we're just reviewing. Now, what did I tell you the prefix pro meant? Before. Cool beans. So this means before. And what did I tell you eukaryote means? Nucleus. Awesome, y'all killing it. So, what does this word actually mean? Before the nucleus. So that means that this type of cell will have no nucleus. Let's talk about the prefix U. What did I tell you it means? It means what? Not after, but true. Okay? So U means true. So what does that tell you about this particular cell? It has a true nucleus. And the reason we say true nucleus is because when we think about a prokaryotic cell, because you know prokaryotic cells are bacteria, and what we care about is the location of the genetic material, the location of DNA. So when we evaluate one of the differences between a prokaryotic and a eukaryotic cell, we're looking at the location of that genetic material or that DNA. Now, in a prokaryotic cell, the DNA is simply lying in the cytoplasm. The location where it lies in the cytoplasm, we call that a nucleoid region, right? But that's not a true nucleus, okay? Now, in the eukaryotic cell, the DNA is behind a separate membrane which keeps it separate from the cytoplasm of the cell. Therefore, this represents what we call a true nucleus. Okay? So that's the main difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. Now, the nucleus is very important in a eukaryotic cell because that's the location of the DNA. So we're going to focus on eukaryotic cells when we talk about these organelles because prokaryotic cells are simple. They don't have many organelles, okay? They're going to have a plasma membrane, All cells have a plasma membrane. When I say plasma membrane, it's the same thing as a cell membrane, okay? They're going to have genetic material. They're going to have cytoplasm. All cells have cytoplasm. And they're going to have another organelle called ribosomes, okay? And pretty much, other than a plasmid, which is just a little packet of DNA, that's pretty much all you're going to have in a prokaryotic cell. And these cells have no membrane-enclosed organelles. So when we talk about cell organelles, with the exception of the ribosome and the plasma membrane, it's best to focus on a eukaryotic cell because that's where most of your organelles are going to be. Y'all with me? All right, so let's talk about this eukaryotic cell. So I'm going to put up a generic cell. And what I mean by generic cell is that it's not a plant cell and it's not an animal cell. So it's going to have organelles. I'm going to put all the organelles in this cell, okay? But I will talk about which organelles are solely plant and solely animal, because some of the organelles that I put up will not be found in one cell or the other. It's not many, but just some. So let's start, first of all, with the thing that makes a cell, and that's that cell membrane or the plasma membrane.
The organelles makes a cell.
Well, no, an organelle doesn't make a cell. Organelles are inside of a cell, so you already have to have a cell, okay? Now, the job of a plasma membrane or cell membrane is to separate the internal contents from the external environment. There's a barrier between what's inside of the cell and the external environment. Now, I'm going to do a cross section, and y'all know I'm like the best artist in the world. Y'all already know this, right?
Yeah.
Somebody said, That's all right.
They're jealous.
Hurt my feelings. Thank you. I know they're jealous. All right, so we're going to do a cross section. Now, this is the cell membrane is also known as a phospholipid bilayer. Okay? Phospholipid bilayer. Where have you heard the term phospholipid before?
Lipids.
And lipids, the last unit. You just tested on that, right? So we talked about the phospholipid. So it's called the bilayer. Even though this is represented by a single line, what you actually have is a bilayer of phospholipids. What does bi mean? Two. So that means if I was to zoom in on this, what I would see would be two layers, mostly two layers of phospholipids. Now there's also proteins in this membrane and there's cholesterol in this membrane, but we want to focus on what the majority of it is, right? The majority is the phospholipid. Now, let's talk about the phospholipid. Let's review about the phospholipid itself. So we remember that the phospholipid, of course, is a lipid, so it's a major organic molecule. It has a head that is made of what? What's this head made of?
Insoluble.
Phosphate. All right, the head is phosphate, and it is what we call hydrophilic. Okay, hydrophilic. Hydro means water, and philic means loving. So the head of this molecule, because phosphate actually carries a charge, and water is polar, and polar means that water carries a charge. And like dissolves like, okay? So if I have a charge and you have a charge, then we cool. Y'all got it?
Got it.
So the head, because phosphate carries a charge and water carries a charge, the head is hydrophilic, meaning that it loves water. But on the other end of this molecule, you have these fatty acids, okay? Now, fatty acids, remember, are carbon and hydrogen. They're mostly carbon and hydrogen bonds, and they're non-polar, meaning that they do not carry a charge. If they don't carry a charge and water carries a charge, do they get along? No. This molecule is what we call hydrophobic, okay? So it is water-fearing. That part of the molecule is water-fearing. Now, here's my dilemma. The majority of the inside of the cell, water. One second, let me write this down before I forget. The majority of the outside of the cell, water. What's your question?
Would oil be hydrophobic?
Oil is hydrophobic, yes. Good analysis of that. All right, now, the majority of the inside of the cell is water. The majority of the outside of the cell is water. And the job of the phospholipid is to separate the inside of the cell from the outside. Phospholipid has a problem because only half of that molecule wants to come in contact with water. So to solve this problem,
We created the hole so they can sneak it.
no, it arranges in what's called a bilayer, 2 layers. So they arrange tail to tail. So the part of the molecule that loves water is happily, well, I should have put it the other way. Ignore that face. Happily sitting in water. The part of the molecule that likes water is in water. And what about the part of the molecule that doesn't like water?
It's staying away.
It's not in the water. It's protected from the water to the inside of the membrane. So this is why this membrane, the plasma membrane, is a bilayer, because the phospholipids have to arrange tail to tail in 2 layers. Okay? So some phospholipids will be facing, the head will be to the inside of the molecule, of the cell, and in the other phospholipids, the head will be to the outside. So on this membrane, you're going to have a bilayer that actually makes up the membrane, the cell membrane. Are y'all with me?
Mm-hmm.
Do we understand why there's a bilayer?
Yeah, so we can separate.
Why is there a bilayer?
So we can separate.
What do you mean separate?
It means to help one stay in the water and make it happy, and one cover it from the water.
That's right. What do you want to say? You tell me yours too. What's
I
up?
was gonna say so that the stuff that does not like water goes in the water, and the stuff that does like water is.
That's awesome, guys. That's exactly right. The stuff that does not like water is not in the water, and the stuff that likes water is in contact with the water. So in order to do that, in aqueous solution, phospholipids form a bilayer. Okay, that's protecting the inside, the fatty acids from the water that it does not like. Now, every cell, every type of cell, prokaryotic and eukaryotic, must have a plasma membrane, because this is the barrier from the outside and the inside stuff. Okay, the job of a plasma membrane or cell membrane. So I'm going to start labeling, guys. Okay, so this is going to be my cell/plasma membrane, because you may see it written either way. And its role is to control what enters and exits the cell, or what we call maintaining homeostasis. Okay, so it controls what enters and exits the cell. That's the job of the plasma membrane. Anything that needs to go in and out this cell has to go through this membrane, because it's the barrier between the inside of the cell and the external environment. We got it?
Like a gun.
Like a guard. All right? Now, eukaryotic cells have multiple membrane systems. So this is like the external membrane, but a eukaryotic cell also has a system of internal membranes. The one that is most noticeable is the membrane that protects the DNA. Okay? So this is also a membrane. This membrane that's around the nucleus has a name, and it's called the nuclear envelope or the nuclear membrane. Nuclear envelope or nuclear membrane. Now, its job is to control what goes in and out of the nucleus. Okay? So the cell membrane controls what goes in and out of the cell, and the nuclear envelope or nuclear membrane controls what goes in and out of the nucleus.
Oh. So one like is the kingdom and one is like protecting the castle.
There you go. One is protecting the kingdom, and the other one is protecting the castle. I love the way you put that. I'm gonna steal that. Thanks. All right. So now, this organelle right here, this entire organelle, so nuclear membrane and what's inside of it, is called the nucleus. The nucleus contains DNA. DNA is an example of which major organic compound? Nucleic acid. What is the function of DNA?
To create, store and transmit genetic information.
Store and transmit genetic information. That is correct. So, if the DNA is storing and transmitting genetic information, that means it's actually controlling what this cell does, right? And since the DNA is in the nucleus, that means the job of the nucleus is to control cell activities. Okay? The nucleus is controlling the cell's activities because it holds the thing that stores and transmits genetic information. It holds the genetic molecule. So since that's where it is, then the nucleus is the site that actually controls what goes on in that cell. It's like the control room, okay? Anything that's going to happen with this cell is controlled by genes. The genes are on the DNA. The DNA is in the nucleus. So the nucleus controls what goes on with the cell. Y'all got it?
Yeah. What happens if it doesn't control, if you lose control?
Cancer. All right. Now, inside of this nucleus, there's a little area. It's like a room inside of this nucleus that is known as the nucleolus. All right. Now, the nucleolus, and you can notice it is like a little dark spot on the inside of the nucleus. The nucleolus is the site where ribosomal RNA is made. So RNA is another type of what? Nucleic acid. Remember, we had two examples of nucleic acid, DNA and RNA. All right. RNA is another type of nucleic acid. There's three types of RNA. Messenger RNA, which is mRNA, transfer RNA, which is tRNA, and ribosomal RNA, which is rRNA. Ribosomal RNA is important because ribosomal RNA is what makes up the ribosome. Okay? The ribosome is made up of RNA and protein. Notice I didn't say lipids, right? The ribosome is made up of RNA and protein. Nucleic acid and protein, no lipids. So since there's no lipids, there's no membrane. Okay? That's why it's one of the organelles that's found in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, because it has no membrane around it. Remember, prokaryotic cells have no internal membranes. So no organelles with membranes will be found in prokaryotic cells. The ribosome has no membrane, so it's found in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Ribosomes can be found in two locations. They can be free-floating out here in this cytosol, or they can be attached to another internal membrane. Now, coming off of the nuclear membrane, there's another internal membrane, and this internal membrane either has ribosomes attached to it or it does not. If ribosomes are attached to this membrane, we call it rough, ER. And it's called rough because the ribosomes are like studs on a road, okay? So we call this one rough, ER. If it does not have ribosomes attached to it, we call it smooth, ER. All right? Now, the ribosomes themselves have a special function. So these little dots represent ribosomes. And the job of a ribosome is to make proteins. Okay? The job of a ribosome is to make proteins. Now, why do prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells need proteins? Because proteins are what's expressed as your traits. The reason that your eyes are the color that they are. The reason that your complexion is what it is. The reason that some of us can digest milk and some of us cannot. Okay? All of that has to do with what proteins are made. And the proteins that are made are controlled by the genes on the DNA. Because DNA is transcribed to RNA, and then RNA is translated to proteins. So if a cell has genetic information, which it must have, it also must have ribosomes. The DNA has the instructions. It knows what to do, but it cannot do it. The ribosome is what carries out the instructions. Okay, you with me? DNA it knows what to do, has all the information, but all it can do is send a message to the ribosome, and the ribosome is able to read that message and do what it's supposed to do. Like a king and a soldier. There you go. Kings in the castle, soldiers in the battlefield. The ribosomes are like the soldiers. I'm loving your analogies. You're killing it. Loving it. All right. So, ribosomes can be located in two locations. They're either on the ER, endoplasmic reticulum, or they're in the cytoplasm. Now, let's talk about cytoplasm because I always forget about it. So let me go ahead and talk about it since I said it. You know what Jello is, right? Everybody know what Jello is. Yeah. Is it liquid or is it solid? It's a semi-solid, right? It's a jelly-like substance. Between the nucleus and the cell membrane, there's a jelly-like substance in there. That's called cytosol, okay? When the organelles are in it, the organelles plus the cytosol, we call that cytoplasm, all right? So those words are usually used interchangeably, okay? Now, the role of the cytosol, the cytoplasm, it has two parts. One is to hold the organelles in place. So think of putting fruit in Jello. Okay, so the fruit would be the organelles and the Jello would be the cytoplasm. So it holds them in place, but it's also the site of most of the cell's metabolic activities. So when the cell is building stuff up or breaking stuff down, most of that happens out here in the cytosol. Each one of these organelles has a specific function that it does, but it only does its function. It doesn't do the other functions. So the nucleus has genetic information that can send a message. The ER, which is the next thing I'm about to talk about, its job is mainly transportation, okay? So the ribosome is making proteins, right? So ribosomes located on the rough ER are actually making their proteins on the ER, and the job of rough ER is to transport proteins. But it only transports the proteins that will exit the cell. Now, not all proteins exit the cell, correct? Yeah. Some stay in. So if a protein is staying in the cell, it's made on a ribosome that's in the cytoplasm. But if a protein is leaving the cell, it's made on a ribosome that's attached to the ER. So where a protein is made also lets you know what's going to happen with that protein, whether or not it is going to stay in the cell or leave the cell. Where are proteins made that stay in the cell? Where are the proteins made that stay in the cell? Which ribosomes? The ribosomes in the cytoplasm or the ribosomes on the ER? In the cytoplasm. If it's staying in, it's made in the cytoplasm. If it's leaving out, it's made on the rough ER. Got it? You sure? What's that?
ER stand for?
Endoplasmic reticulum. I'll write it right here. Endoplasmic reticulum. ER is for short. Endoplasmic reticulum. Now, that's the job of rough ER. The smooth ER have ribosomes on it? No. So it has a different role. Two of its jobs, one of them is to make lipids. Where have you heard that word lipids before? Biomolecules. What's the function of a lipid?
To create the membranes.
Create the membranes. Long-term energy storage.
Signal functions.
Yeah, so that's important, right? We need a lot of smooth ER because if this membrane gets damaged, where are we going to get more lipids from? Smooth ER has to make them. Another one that's important, another function of the smooth ER, is that it detoxifies poisons and chemicals. Can anybody think of an organ in your body that would have cells with a lot of smooth ER in it? No? The liver. That's right, the liver. The liver's job, the organ's job, is to detoxify things, alcohol, chemicals, medications, all that stuff that gets in your body. The liver's job is to make them non-toxic. So remember, cells create tissues, tissues create organs. So that means the cells that make the tissues, that make the liver, will have a lot of smooth ER. Now, all cells will have these organelles, or combinations of these organelles. The amount that they have depends on the job of the tissue or the organ that they're supposed to do. All right? So a muscle cell is going to have a whole lot of mitochondria. So mitochondria is also an organelle we're going to talk about, but not right now. Let me finish this one. All right. So we've talked about plasma membrane, nuclear membrane, nucleus, nucleolus, ERs, rough and smooth, and the ribosome. There's another membrane organelle inside of this, and many people say that it looks like a stack of flattened pancakes. I'm going to erase this because I need some room, but we already know what that is, right?
You should have been an artist.
I know, I miss my calling. I love the way you pump me up. Keep going. All right, so anyway, this other one, people say it looks like a stack of flattened pancakes. It's really like some flattened membranes, okay? And
Like a burger.
both sides. All right. So this membrane, somebody else said that earlier. It looks more like a burger. That's my bad drawing. It don't look like this, you know. But
I can see the tomato, the chicken.
all right. So this one is called Golgi. All right, Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies, whichever one is fine, but you need to know it's the Golgi. Now, the Golgi is typically going to be somewhere near that endoplasmic reticulum because of its job, okay? The Golgi's job is to actually sort, modify, package, and ship lipids and proteins. So why do you think it's going to be near the ER? Because they make lipids and proteins, right? So I'm going to be near what I need to do my job. So the job of the Golgi is to sort, modify, package, ship lipids and proteins, right? Now, a lot of people like to, what's the word I'm looking for? Liken it to, that's not what I was looking for, but that'll work, like a shipping facility, okay?
Like merchants.
Like UPS. It picks up the packages, it sorts them out, and sends them to where they need to go, okay? So that's the Golgi, right? Golgi is when it's ready to go, all right? So if it needs to go, it goes to the Golgi. Got it?
That's why they call it Golgi.
Well, it's called the Golgi for the person that discovered it, but that'll work too. All right, so now that's the majority of the organelles, but we got to talk about some more, which means I got to erase that and get me a clean cell back up here without all that stuff on it, right? So we're going to put some DNA back in here.
If you sold that picture, you could have got $2 million.
I know, I just got rid of all my money, right?
Yeah.
Put some ribosomes. I'm talking about just keep boosting me up. I love it. Put some ribosomes out here, some Golgi. All right, now remember this was a generic cell. So I'm going to put in on the outside of this plasma membrane, I'm going to put something here. Now what I'm putting on the outside of this plasma membrane is found in all kingdoms except animal kingdoms. So that means animal cells do not have this, but bacteria, protists, fungi, and plants all do. And this thing is called a cell wall. The job of a cell wall is structure and support. So if we're looking at the difference between a plant cell and an animal cell, a plant cell will have a cell wall for structure and support, but an animal cell would not. What an animal cell would use for structure and support would be microtubules, microfilaments, and stuff. That you don't know the specifics of those, but they are called the cytoskeleton. Now, let's break down this word. Everybody knows what a skeleton is, right? Because we have one. And what does your skeleton do for you? It gives your body what? Structure and protection. Okay? But when you see the prefix cyto, this means cell. Cyto means cell. So what does cytoskeleton mean? The cell skeleton. All right? And its job is to provide structure. Now, the cytoskeleton is going to be providing structure from the inside of the cell. So the reason that neurons are shaped the way they are and squamous shells are shaped the way that they are is because of the cytoskeleton that's on the inside. It's helping to give that cell its shape. Cell walls provide structure from the outside, okay? But animal cells do not have a cell wall. We're clear on that?
Yeah.
All right. Now, the other organelle I want to talk about is chloroplasts. Actually, I'm going to put these up here by themselves. There's two very special organelles. All of the organelles I've mentioned so far only have one membrane around them, okay? They're membrane enclosed organelles, but they only have one membrane. These two organelles, though, are special. These two organelles are what we call double membrane enclosed organelles. They're double membrane enclosed. This one is chloroplast, okay? So it has two membranes. It has an inner membrane and an outer membrane, as well as this one has an inner membrane and an outer membrane. So this one is chloroplast, and this one is mitochondria. Now, one thing I want to point out before we get to it, we do not use analogies. So do not tell me the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, because most students say that and have no idea what it means. We go straight to what's going on with these. All right, so the chloroplast is used in photosynthesis. And mitochondria is used in cellular respiration. Now, these are what we call transforming organelles. They transform energy, okay? Their job is to transform energy. The mitochondria can only work after the chloroplast has done its job. Because what chloroplast does, chloroplast takes energy from the sun and transfers it into the energy of the bonds between carbohydrates or sugars. And remember, where did I tell you guys the energy is found? In where? The bonds between what elements? The carbon and the hydrogens, right? So, the job of chloroplast is to take energy from the sun and transform it into the energy found in sugars, okay? The job of the mitochondria is then to take the energy found in sugars and transform it to the energy found in ATP. Well, it transfers it to ATP.
What's ATP?
ATP is the energy molecule of the cell. It's the only type of not the only type, but it's the main type of energy that the cell can use. The cells can't use the energy when it's in the sugars. It can use the energy once it gets into ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. And we're going to talk about ATP exclusively. But right now what you need to know is where is it made. It's made by the mitochondria. Okay? So the chloroplast changes sun energy into energy in the bonds of sugar. So this is chemical energy. So it goes from being light energy to chemical energy, but it's not usable chemical energy. The mitochondria then takes this unusable chemical energy and makes it into usable chemical energy. Are y'all with me?
Yeah.
So chloroplast makes the sugars, right, by taking the sun's energy and putting it into the sugars. And mitochondria makes the ATP. All right? Now, Chloroplast is found in plants only. We don't have chloroplast. Chloroplast contains a green pigment called chlorophyll. So the green parts you see of plants is because they contain chloroplast. Mitochondria is found in both plants and animals. Because even when plants make the sugars, they still can't use the energy. So they have to have their mitochondria change it into ATP as well. Yes?
Okay, so when the trees turn like the ground, that means they don't have the chloroplast?
No, what's happening is, we'll talk about that. It's another unit. I'll talk, when I get out I'll tell you about that. All right, but it's not that they don't have chloroplast. It's just that the levels of chlorophyll have gone down. I'm telling you about it anyway, aren't I? It's that the levels of chlorophyll have gone down. Chlorophyll isn't the only pigment. There's also carotenoids in there, which have the yellows and the oranges. And so when the chlorophyll levels go down, you can see the other pigments, which makes it look a different color. All right, so anyway, that's the organelles. I don't think I missed any. Say that again. Did I miss any? Oh, yes I did. Centrioles.
I knew it.
I missed one. Centrioles. Centrioles are usually found in pairs, and their job is to aid in cell division. Okay? So they become extremely important when we get to that next unit when we talk about the cell cycle. But right now you just need to know that they aid in cell division. All right? Any questions about what we just went over?
That was a lot of information.
It was a lot of information. Now we're going to see how much of it you actually retained. What's up?
The word bank says there's also lysosomes.
Thank you. Lysosomes. I'm glad you picked that up. Lysosomes are found in animal cells only. And a lysosome is a pocket of digestive enzymes. Okay? A lysosome, they're small. They're found inside of animal cells, and they are a pocket of digestive enzymes. When I say digestive enzymes, what does that make you think of? Okay, well, what is happening to it? Breaking down. So the job of the lysosome is to keep the cell clean. When organelles stop functioning, when bacteria or viruses get into the cell, their job is to get those things inside and break them down. Okay? Also to talk about vacuoles. Vacuoles' job is storage. They store water or waste or food particles. Okay? So a vacuole, there's different types of vacuoles. V-A-C-U-O-L-E. Can't spell right now. Different types of vacuoles. In animals, you'll have small ones. In animal cells, you'll have small vacuoles, which are like food vacuoles. And what a food vacuole would do is pick up the foreign object, fuse with the lysosome, so the lysosome can break it down. Okay? In plants, like a vacuum bag, right? In plants, though, the vacuole is extremely large. It's like the largest thing you see in a plant. It's called a central vacuole, and it takes up the majority of the space of the inside of plant cells because it's actually holding mostly water. Okay? And it plays an important role in that plant by holding that water, which we'll talk about in the next unit, actually. Not vacuoles, but how important their role is. Now, when it comes to plant cells and animal cells, I want you to remember the 3 C's. When it comes to plant cells, and we're talking about the organelles, there's 3 C's you need to remember. 1, cell wall. 2, chloroplast.
And all the information needed.
And 3, central vacuole. That means it's a really, really large vacuole. Okay? These are the 3 organelles that are found in plant cells, but not in animal cells.
Oh.
Okay? So remember the 3 C's. Cell wall, chloroplast, central vacuole. These are found in plant cells, but not animal cells. And also remember that lysosomes are found in animal cells, but not plant cells. Another way to remember that the lysosome keeps the cell clean, think about Lysol. What do you do with Lysol? You clean. So lysosomes cleans. Got it?
Gotcha.
Cleans the cell.
Oh, so that's why, so animals are jealous of that. That's
No, we just can't make our own food. Like, you know, the plants taking all this energy from the sun and storing it, and we need energy. Can't make it. You made energy. You stored extra. I'm gonna eat it. So plants, or in other words, plants make it and we take it. All right. So that's it, guys. Now let's go over